Hi everyone, my name is Terry Westwell and today is Tuesday, which means it's time to discuss our book of the week, which is Your Knife, My Heart by K.M Moronova. First, this is a spoiler-free section, so if you haven't read this book yet, don't worry about it, it won't be spoiled for you here. There will be some spoiler-related things that I want to discuss, but that'll be later on in the video and you will get plenty of warning. If you'd like to join in on any of the discussions, send me your thoughts, comments, or even a short video clip of you discussing the book, then I'll list the next upcoming 4 books in the description below. I rated this book 4.5 stars. I had so much fun with it. In fact, the second I finished it, I actually picked up the sequel, which is My Blade, Your Back. In fact, I also read another book by this author, and while I did also enjoy that one, I didn't enjoy it anywhere near as much, so this one is definitely the standout for me. Okay, so quick summary. This book follows Emery and it also follows Cameron, who is one of the deadliest soldiers in the Dark Forces, an underground military organisation where survival is everything. After an experimental drug has left him completely unable to control his violent impulses around his teammates, he's thrown back into the brutal under-trials and partnered with Emery, who has just escaped her death sentence herself. Together, they're forced to survive ruthless training, deadly missions, and each other, all while trying to figure out whether or not Cameron is going to become her greatest ally or killer. If I had to compare this to any other book, then I would probably say that it reminds me a little bit of something like Lights Out. It's that sort of morally grey romance where everybody is completely unhinged, probably needs therapy, and yet you root for them anyway. This book isn't trying to be a literary masterpiece, it's just trying to be entertaining, and honestly, I think it absolutely succeeds. It is fast-paced, it's dark, it's absolutely chaotic, and honestly, it was addictive. It's also one of those books that I find surprisingly difficult to review because there's no one single aspect that immediately jumps out and stands out amongst the rest. It was more just about the overall experience. I had so much fun reading it and I just wanted to know what was happening next, and before I knew it, I had flown through it and I was picking up the next book. I really liked both Cameron and Emery. I mean, neither of them were particularly good people, but then I would argue that I think every character in this book was morally grey to some extent, and I really loved that. There wasn't the heroes and villains in a traditional sense. Everybody had done terrible things and everybody had baggage and everyone had secrets, and watching those characters and relationships develop when, these people probably shouldn't be trusting anyone anyways, made for a really entertaining read. I also loved some of the unlikely friendships that developed along the way. I think it added some real heart to the story that was otherwise quite dark. The romance also really worked for me. I mean, Cameron was about as much of a walking red flag as you could possibly be. He certainly has issues, and I think actually in saying that he has issues is probably understatement of the year. However, it still really worked. The chemistry between the characters was great, given the environment and the predicament they were in. There was definitely spice, however, it never felt like it was the main point to the story. The romance sort of happened alongside everything else, rather than feel like it had completely replaced the plot. For me, I actually really enjoyed the pacing. It was a relatively short book and it absolutely flies by. Plus, every chapter kind of felt like something new was happening. You never really knew what challenge the characters were going to face next or how they were going to get out of it, and it just made it really bingeable. Honestly, I feel like I don't have very many criticisms. I think that if you are someone who prefers a slower, more literary writing, or someone who likes lots of symbolism and beautiful prose, then this one's probably not going to be for you. Honestly, I think it's just really focused on just being a very entertaining read rather than being the most technically impressive novel ever written, and that is fine by me. Now, I've said this a few times on this channel, but if the story grips me and I feel connected to the characters, then I really don't care if every sentence sounds like poetry or not. I think that this book knew exactly what it wanted to be, and I think it delivered. So, as for the question, would I recommend the book? Yes, absolutely, but with a few caveats because this book definitely isn't going to be for everyone. There is violence and it is a little bit darker. There are morally grey characters and spice, so there's definitely things that certain readers might find uncomfortable to read. However, if you're already into slightly darker romance, then you might find this a very entertaining read. And will I be reading any more by this author? Yes, absolutely. In fact, I have already read another book by K.M Moronova, and while I didn't enjoy it quite as much as this duology, I will certainly be continue to read more of the work. In the video, I said that you would get plenty of warning for any upcoming spoilers. Now, this is that moment, so if you haven't read this book yet, I would suggest going doing that first, because beyond this point, there may be spoilers. One thing I loved was seeing Cameron's character develop throughout the story. He's introduced as this completely unstable, unpredictable killing machine, and as the story goes on, we're sort of introduced to these tiny glimpses that show he's so much more than what everybody assumes. Like, he's obviously still dangerous and completely unhinged, but Emery starts to see parts of him that nobody else really notices. I also loved the relationships that developed throughout the under trials. The unlikely friendships were some of my favourite parts because it added this little bit of hope in what would otherwise be a pretty brutal world, and then it sort of rips it apart when her friend dies at the end. And then with that ending, the second it finished, I don't even think I hesitated. I went and immediately picked up My Blade, Your Back because I needed to know what happened next. Which is probably one of the biggest compliments I can give any book. It left me completely invested in the characters and desperately wanting to know what happened to them next. So overall, Your Knife, My Heart is a dark, addictive, and ridiculously entertaining read that isn't trying to reinvent the genre. It's not trying to be the most beautifully written book you will ever read. It's simply trying to tell you a fast paced, entertaining story that has compelling characters, lots of tension, and romance that will keep you turning the pages. But if you've read it, let me know what you thought in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next week when we'll be discussing The Things We Leave Behind by Rebecca Yarros. So if you'd like to be a part of the discussion, don't forget to send me your thoughts and comments by Sunday the 9th of August. The following week we'll be discussing It's For Your Own Good by Kate Francis, but don't forget if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, we do now list the next 4 books down below along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose the genre that best suits you and the best time frame to read it in. If you like romance, fantasy, or even thriller, basically anything fiction book related, then I suggest you head on over to the channel's intro video, where you can find out more information on how you can take part in this online book club. We announce books at least 4 weeks in advance, and we accept your bookish feedback in a wide manner of ways. Post your comment below a video, send in a voice note, or even send me a short video clip of you discussing the book. Alternatively, you can just send me a direct message.